Hey, what's up guys? So we're back with another Star Citizen video. If you're new to the channel, welcome. We're going to be checking out another video by Morphologis. So shout out and credit goes to Morphologis. And this one is called An Architect Reviews New Babbage. It looks like it's the name of a city. So this time, just like how we checked out the biggest city in Star Citizen, which was ArcCorp. This time we're going to be checking out another city called New Babbage. And we're just going to see what the city is all about, maybe the size of it, but one thing's for sure, it's not bigger than ArcCorp because, you know, a Morphologis did label ArcCorp as the biggest city in the game. So let's see what's unique about New Babbage, because so far this is what I got from ArcCorp. It gave me a little vibe of Cyberpunk, like the city itself, but the industrial sector and the overhead view kind of gave me a little vibe of Coruscant from Star Wars. But either way, without anything else, let's just jump into the video.
At the furthest reaches of the Stanton system and beneath the crystalline blue skies of Microtech lies the city of New Babbage, home to the tech company Microtech, from which the planet inherits its name. It's this city that is the focus of today's episode of An Architect Reviews, where I will, as always, utilize my experience in the field of architecture to examine something in the digital realm, breaking down what I find to be successful and what I see falls short. One thing that definitely won't fall short, though, is the sponsor of today's video, NordVPN. Without them, I wouldn't be able to access the IP-restricted websites I need to use while working from abroad, or even be able to watch the shows I want to.
Yeah, let's skip this.
Guarantee.
Alright.
Whether it be for an entire city in urban planning or on a smaller scale for a home, one of the first things good designers consider is the context of the site. These are generally things like topography, environmental effects caused by its location.
Oh yeah, this was the city that was shown in Space Convention from Bed Bananas. There was like a lot of snow and everything, so I guess that's like the unique part of the city. It's in a cold environment.
And things like culture, but in the case of Microtech, the planet was pretty much unoccupied prior to Microtech acquiring it from the UEE, due to a terraforming incident that caused most of the planet to become frozen. This made Microtech the perfect place to keep computers cold, which is what Microtech specializes in. And so the location of New Babbage is actually really well selected. Nearby a body of water to supply the populace with water needs, and in a valley which protects the city from the harsh effects of the environment, such as for big superstorms that Microtech might experience. But one of the challenges that CIG definitely faced with designing this city was the fact that it's in a game and it has to be all built at once. In reality, cities are developed over time and many different hands have a say in the design of it. And so you often get different scale buildings in different districts that oftentimes end up obtaining their own identity. In order for CIG to create a believable city, they needed to understand a lot about urban planning and the way cities are generally built. And so they would have had to have performed a case study.
I don't know why, but since it's in a frozen and snow environment, and because it's a city, it kind of gave me a little bit of Frostpunk. If you guys haven't given that game a chance, I highly recommend it. If you guys are into post-apocalyptic games and also survival, because Frostpunk is one of the is an amazing game, and Frostpunk 2 actually just recently came out like about a month ago. I haven't played the game yet, but I plan on playing it maybe for the channel. So. But I mean, we'll take a look into it. But anyways, let's continue.
On cities around our planet Earth to understand how cities should look if they were built over time in a context such as this. And you can really tell that studying paid off. There are a lot of factors that make New Babbage the most believable city in Star Citizen, but allow me to point out just a few. Notice how the city's scale tapers off on the edges with different scale buildings, and how it's broken down into different districts connected by a vast network of transportation links. Buffering the districts are parks with trees and walkways and even smaller scale buildings that you could see as parking areas or maybe even cafes. In
look at the detail.
Urban planning design, one very important factor of a good design is considering the walkability of your city, understanding how far away key features of it are for the user, How far is the work area from a green area? How far is the transportation hub from these areas? Is it equitable to different districts so that everybody has fair access to these very important locations for the user, because it can affect the health of the city overall. CIG simulates this idea really well with this city, with good access to green areas throughout each district. But one thing that this really helps to do from a game design standpoint is create scale in the environment. It's hard to understand the scale of a city without reference points that we as humans understand. Things like lamps and trees are easy to recognize for us, so when you put that next to a building, we understand its scale relative to the human form. And it makes the space more believable. We can see ourselves in that space because we can relate it to places that we've been. That being said though, some of you may notice that the design of Microtech isn't quite like some place that you may have been if you live in a temperate environment. And that's because Microtech exists in an extreme environment where it is very uncomfortable to be spending time outdoors and exposed to the elements for long periods of time for regular pedestrians. And so the design of the city puts most of the pedestrian walkways and plazas on the interiors of buildings. And so that's why you'll see a lot of districts with large structures at their base. This allows pedestrians to walk to their destination indoors and safe in a warm environment. Parallels to this in our real world would be indoor cities like you might find in Asia, where rain is frequent and summers are extremely hot. But now I want to focus on the three main areas that you can visit as a player.
Okay, so basically overall, what he spoke of, like having things like nearby, they really took it into like consideration of what would be in real life. Like, do you live close to maybe a bus stop or a train station, or do you have a car of your own? Basically, because I'm like those needs, because that is something you would take in consideration. Because for me, when I was in high school, I did live close enough to my school, maybe like 2 to 3 miles, give or take. And my parents did drop me off in the morning, but however, I always walked home in the afternoon. That's until I got my until I was able to drive. But I get it. Like they did take into consideration of making sure things were in like reasonable distance here and there. But what I really like is how he mentioned that it was placed placed well with the water and the valley, protecting them against environmental hazards. So far, I really like what I'm hearing.
Player in Star Citizen. And the first one should be unmissable. Can you see it? It's the white tower with the hole through it, the new Babbage building.
Right up
and
there.
It's also where you spawn, which is very intentional by the designers over at CIG.
Oh, that's where you spawn.
It's what's referred to as a wayfinding device. Architecture sometimes uses this as well. It gives users a point of reference that helps them orient themselves in the space. And so it's absolutely no accident that this building can be seen from every location in New Babbage that you can access. That's attention to detail. Well done, CIG. Then there's the domed-off commons or plaza area that you have in a city where people collect and meet. This is all an indoor area, and it's very sensibly designed. We'll cover this a little bit later in the video. Finally, the last of the three main locations is the Spaceport, located just across the lake, nestled nicely into the side of a mountain overlooking the city. First of all, that's amazing. I love it when architecture uses the environment to make a really cool looking building.
Yeah.
From a practical standpoint, it makes a lot of sense to have the spaceport out here. Not only is it safer in case a spaceship crashes, but you also have the factor of the noise that spaceships undoubtedly make. That
makes sense. Nobody wants to live right next to an airport and hear the planes go off every single like minute. But that actually did happen. Like if you went to, I went to boot camp at MCRD San Diego in California, and we were right next to the airport. So every like few minutes, including at nighttime, we always hear a plane take off. And I do understand, like, because noise could be a huge factor of where you want to live.
would disturb residents if it were directly in the middle of the city, like in Lorville or in Area 18 where you really don't have a choice. From a wayfinding standpoint though, it also makes this location easier to find. It's recognizable as a spaceport in my mind. It's a very unique, large building with red lights and clear opening doors that you can fly up to and land in. But it's also just cool to have a spaceport that overlooks the city instead of being in it, allowing you to really appreciate the scale of the place.
Yeah, it looks cool
But
from
now
a distance.
let's land and take a look at the inside of this incredible city.
Nice ship.
I gotta say that there's something really special about side open hangars. It just makes the experience of entering a space much more grand. But let's make our way into the spaceport and on up to the ASOP terminal area. One way I like to measure how successful an interior design is how recognizable a programmatic element is. In the case of the New Babbage Spaceport, it's pretty easy to navigate, and I think finding the ASOP terminals in this case is pretty easy. They're well embellished, well lit, and it's understandable that this is an important area, and so you'll naturally gravitate towards the ASOP terminals. I also love the use of windows at the end of the space to extend it out onto the city and give users an idea of their location. The room adjacent to this one, though, has some weird organizational issues. The information desk, for example, doesn't face the ship rentals or the ASOP terminals where most players come in. It faces instead up the stairs towards the surface entrance and commercial flights. Now, that could be an argument for where most people would enter, but then the AI director, which is on the corner of the stairs there, is facing the opposite direction, which is kind of strange as well. Wouldn't you want to put it at the top of the stairs instead? I don't know, it's a bit confusing. And probably the most unfortunate part for me here is how the stairway in the center of the room obstructs the view out the window.
Oh, look at those.
I think this could have been a lot.
The birds and the butterflies holograms, cool. And last episode in our corp, yeah, I do remember the admin desk being placed like at the top of the stairs, so that would be a ideal place where you want to put a desk. But then again, maybe there's a reason for the design, or like as Morphologis says, it could be a design flaw or something they could have improved on.
Lot lower, that's the object below this floating sign, so that you get a clear view out the window even from the top of these stairs. I think it would have made the grand entrance a lot more exciting for people coming off of commercial flights to see the city outside of those windows perfectly framed. And I also think that Miss Babbage, the AI, could have been placed here in front of the window instead. I mean, you're looking out of the city and you want to get some direction, it seems the logical place to put it. But I love the gesture of this window that frames the city in general. It's a great location overlooking the city, and having this window inside of the spaceport just makes a lot of sense. But now let's head down to the Metro Loop and take a look at how that's designed. After traveling down the stairs, we'll make our way through security and customs, and finally into an elevator that'll take us down to the Metro Loop platform, which is all really well labeled. One of the things I love about New Babbage and other cities in Star Citizen is that you can navigate the area based on signage like you would in the real world. It really adds to the immersion, but it's also sensible in terms of design. In the case of New Babbage, what I think it does better than Lorville is that you don't necessarily need the signage though to understand where you need to go. The spaces aren't necessarily mazes. There are clear, distinct areas that don't repeat themselves. Although the station's not a great example because the platforms are pretty much identical on both sides. They only have different labels in the center of the room on the well-designed furniture. But now let's step onto the Metro Loop, because I really love the design of this train. Now, first of all, I'm not entirely sure that this thing is actually a Hyperloop, because I don't think that the tube is necessarily a vacuum. I think it's
I like the design of the train and the colors used.
instead that the tube is meant to protect the train from high winds and to allow it to travel unobstructed from point to point as it snows frequently in New Babbage. It's unnecessary for the entire thing to be made out of glass, but it's amazing if the budget would allow for it. You get a great view of the city while you travel into the various locations.
Yeah, but that glass better be strong, not like bulletproof. I mean like, basically, that thing better be powerful, because to be honest, if I'm moving at that speed and the only thing surrounding me is glass, I'd be a little uneasy.
That you may want to visit, such as the Microtech Tower, which houses the Aspire Grand, the only apartment building where we can have apartments right now in New Babbage. But before we get upstairs, I want to point your attention to this curved LCD monitor. I really love the fact that we've got a view of the outside world or some sort of image to make the corridors feel a little bit less, well, sad. And I also love the lighting on the edge of the stairs.
Feels like an aquarium.
Arriving at the top of the stairs, we're greeted with a glorious sunroof that looks out onto the Microtech building above, allowing us to understand where we are relative to the rest of the city. We're now nearby the big building we saw while flying in, and consequently, as I said before, where we spawn in if we choose this as our starting point. Here you can also see the startings of the indoor city that I described. Unlike in Lorville on Hurston, they actually care about whether or not you're going to die if you walk outside. Next, I want to take you through the Nest, which is part of the Aspire Grand. It's that big tower that I called the Microtech Tower. We're going to go up to one of the hallways and check out the way that looks, but first I'm going to show you guys the lobby.
Look at the colored feathers. That's a really cool design, and I really like the coloring and also the lighting and everything. It looks great. I mean, the colors look fantastic. I really like it.
I really love the sunken meeting space at the center of the room. Here CIG is employing a really good technique to separate space visually without using any walls. Well, yes, it has some partitions. They're using the elevation of the floor to denote a more intimate space for conversation. Subconsciously, it tells users not to walk through this space unless they want to participate in this activity, and so people will tend to navigate around it unless they want to sit in one of the couches. This is a really great way to tell people what a space is used for without using any sort of signage. It also helps break down the scale of the space, which is otherwise quite large. I also love the stately chandelier. But now let's hop onto the lift and check out one of the hallways that lead us to our hab. One of the things I appreciate here on the top floor is the change in materiality. It speaks to a more intimate kind of domestic setting when you use wood floors. Something about it feels more like home than, say, cold stone or even steel plating, which is what we often see in Star Citizen. I also really like how they've labeled and lit each individual hab. And speaking of the lighting quality, it just is reminiscent of something like a late twilight sky, something that's really comfortable to have in temperature and mood for just before you go to sleep. And I love the point lighting, the pools of light. There's something very comforting about having individual point lights in a space that make it feel more welcoming and high-end. Why this is the case,
I agree.
I'm not
it looks
sure.
amazing.
Something to do with human psychology. I'm sure there are some research papers that explain this. But now let's head back down to the plaza and walk on over to the hospital.
Oh man, I thought maybe he was gonna go into one of the apartments, but hey.
Here, rather than talking about the design of this space, I instead want to focus on a particular aspect of the profession that I think is pretty interesting. In a lot of books and even in popular culture, architecture is perceived of as a monolith. In reality, architects and firms often specialize in specific areas of architecture, as certain types of buildings can require a lot of specialized knowledge, such as in the case of a hospital. While being able to design a floor plan is taught in university, buildings like hospitals are so complex and have so much technology packed into them these days that they require many different consultants just for the architect to be able to understand how all the pieces fit together. And often, that architect needs to have experience before they even take a project like this, because the budgets they deal with are often huge and the implications for failure much larger. Liability is a real concern when it comes to places like hospitals, as people can legitimately die due to bad design. Even something as simple as the HVAC air circulation system in a hospital can become incredibly complex, separating each room into its own unique system and having a series of filters so that air is not transferred from one room to the next in the case of some sort of virus that could spread through the hospital. Stuff like this has to be considered in the design of a space like this. And so where I'm going with this is that you can understand how it would be difficult for me to rate how well these spaces are designed from a technical standpoint, as I don't specialize in designing hospitals. But
I don't specialize in designing anything, so I can't even say anything.
I can tell you this. This space feels like a hospital. The floor plan feels like hospitals I've been to.
The door looks like a cargo bay, though.
That I've looked over for hospitals, though, like I said, I've not designed one personally. And a lot of the programmatic adjacencies feel like they make sense. For example, here we find ourselves in a lounge just outside the elevators. If you think about it, people who are visiting those who may be inside some of the hospital rooms may want to wait to see the doctor to learn about the condition of their family member. Or maybe they want to meet here with doctors before they move over to one of the hospital rooms. but it also gives people who aren't part of staff a place to congregate so they don't wander through the hallways and get in the way of hospital staff. Heading into the hallways where I ordinarily wouldn't be allowed to access if I were just somebody walking around, we can see that one of the gurneys is actually parked in a parking spot in the hallway that they designed. I like this attention to detail, something that they didn't need to add, but makes the space feel more believable. And that really is the goal here for CIG.
Design of the room looks crazy.
Feel believable. And I think they pull it off, especially here in one of the hospital rooms. There's all the elements you would imagine that you would need. A working place for hospital staff and doctors, a waiting area for the family, an operable window to help the mental health of the patient as they recover from their injury. There's just a lot of thought that went into this space that I really appreciate. If there's only one thing that really comes across to you in my architect review videos on Star Citizen, I hope it's that CIG cares about the details of this game. They spend huge amounts of effort in making these spaces feel believable so that you can be immersed in this environment. That's what makes making videos like these so much fun, because so much thought went into these spaces in the first place. But I digress. There's still much to see and so little time to talk about it. So let's move on now to the Commons area of New Babbage, which is the last place we're going to visit. Well, it's pretty big, so there's still a lot to talk about, but it's the last big area we're going to visit.
For me personally, the hospital looked amazing. I mean, the design of it looked amazing, the color of it, but like Morphologis, I never designed a hospital before. I don't know what a correct way to do it is or anything like that. I don't have any training. I don't even have a little bit of experience, none of that. But the way he explained it does make sense. Attention to detail and also just like one small mistake in designing it incorrectly could cost a life. And so that means, so I understand that you really need to be careful who you choose when it comes to designing places like that, because one wrong move and someone can die, or multiple people can die. So that is very, very sensitive. But either way, I'm just saying the color of it, the design of it, and also when you saw that hospital room, you saw like the screens with the screens on the sides and everything, and also the storage cabinets above it. Everything looked amazing. I really like it. So far, this place is a little bit more kind of like a utopia, and a little bit more, what's the right word? Kind of safe, I guess you could say, in a way, than R-Corp. Because like I said, R-Corp just looks like cyberpunk. But this place kind of looks a little bit more futuristic, if that makes any sense. I'm sorry.
So some backstory about what Microtech is supposed to be designed after in our modern world. Microtech is a tech company of the future. And if you were to expand the current trajectory of tech companies in our Silicon Valley, for example, at present, employees work and live inside the company. They design these massive complexes with restaurants, living facilities, workout facilities, and obviously the place that you work. All with the idea that you live and work for the company.
Yeah, this was the same place. So this really is the same place as Space Convention from Bed Bananas. I remember they tried to do yoga in the middle there, and then they went to one of their like shops and bought like some sort of smoothie or something like that. I remember one of them was called like Weekend Warrior, and they were just having a great time.
It's a little bit dystopian, but it's happening right now.
Yeah.
And I'm sure some of you who are viewers of this channel may be part of this industry and may even live in one of these massive complexes, like Google. Microtech imagines what would happen in the distant future when a company would have so much power that it could basically build an entire city and own a planet for its employees. That's what this is. Microtech is basically a company city. And all of these workers are programmers and engineers who work for this massive galaxy-spanning company. And it's this context that helped CIG's designers design the spaces inside the Commons and inside the city as a whole.
Yeah,
You
it
have
really
healthy
does sound like
places to
Google.
eat, workout areas to keep the minds and bodies of the workers
Oh
fit,
yeah, that's the shop. Garcia's Greens. Yeah, there we
and
go.
even a commercial district for them to spend
Where
their
they
money.
bought the
Being a tech
smoothies
company,
or
though,
juices.
that's always looking for new clients, New Babbage also serves as a tourist destination as well as a flagship store for those looking to upgrade their ships with the latest in technology. And so the Commons offers a variety of the most up-to-date services that any Star Citizen might need on a stopover on this planet. Places to buy and sell commodities at the Trade and Development Division, for example. But all done within the safe enclosure of the domes that protect occupants from the harsh environment, creating a fun contrast between a tropical interior experience and a wasteland of freezing cold and snow outside.
Yeah, it's a like whole different environment. Ooh. Damn. And not only that, did you see the survival estimate? It wasn't going down by 1 second. It was going by like 2 seconds.
It's definitely better to be inside. Seeing as how this is the flagship city of Microtech, it has to have a flagship store. And you'll find that at the center of the commercial area of the Commons, whose design is certainly reminiscent of places that you might have visited in the real world, like the Apple Store. This is certainly no accident, and it seems to me that CIG took direct precedent study from Apple stores around the world. While commercial spaces certainly aren't as complex as something like a hospital.
Wait, I want to read that.
World.
We started by revolutionizing personal computing, and we never stopped.
While commercial spaces certainly aren't as complex as something like a hospital or an airport, there's still a lot of research that goes into...
What is that? Mobiglas version 1. The bottom's a little cut out, but let me see. When Magnus Tobin released the first generation Mobiglas in 2818, it changed the way the Empire thought about wearable... Wait, what's that say? Oh, wearable devices. From its unique holographic display and unmatched security. The screen is a bit far away, guys. That's why. To its you know what?
To the creation and design of these facilities to help present and sell a product. While it may on the surface just seem like a simple task to design a beautiful space to sell something, companies like Apple will spend millions of dollars and thousands of man-hours to understand what makes a space work for their means. How can they make a space encourage somebody to purchase something, encourage them to feel comfortable with their product, and comfortable to talk to one of their sales representatives. These studies target specific ideas like materiality, the size of space, the color of the lighting, and even the lighting quality, which are all meant to push a client in a specific direction psychologically. Let me give you an example of how architecture can influence your perception of a product. Take a look at this Gucci store. Notice how there's a red rope at the front, how the door is tended by an individual wearing a nice suit, and how the interior is well lit and the products are well presented on shelves. As if each individual product is a work of art worthy of individual display. Now let's contrast that with another Gucci bag.
I saw that once at a Dior and a Louis Vuitton store back at a mall back at my home. And it was the same thing. There was always a security guard in a suit, like standing at the entrance, and the store was always well lit. There was literally glass displays everywhere, so that makes sense.
Just sitting on this table with a bunch of other bags. How do you feel about the quality of this bag? How do you feel about the price of this bag? It's these subtleties like the materials and the way that you present a product that can make it feel higher end.
Presentation's everything.
You expect a certain price in one condition, whereas you'll scoff at something so expensive in another. It's the same idea with the Apple Store. These spaces are designed to be big, grand, and high-end to make you feel like there's a justification for paying an entire month's rent on a small device that can fit in the palm of your hand. While I don't mean to be dismissive of the immense amount of work that goes into engineering, designing, and manufacturing stuff like iPhones and handbags, there certainly is likely a hefty margin of profit attached to each of these products. And it's because of this perception that these companies create that they know that you're going to pay that price. So it's this architecture that helps support the narrative that they want to tell. Stuff like this glass stairway is meant to impress because it's so rare to see something like this, and the reason why it's rare is because it's incredibly expensive to do. We're talking the price of a home here, hundreds of thousands of dollars in engineering and material. Just a single glass pane in the Chicago flagship Apple store could cost upwards of $50,000 to $100,000 US. But I'm sure now you can start to understand the psychological effect that spending this kind of money can have on both the client and the people who work there. So CIG did a really good job by following the Apple design language and converting it into something that looks more like Microtech. It once again sells the believability of the company and the believability of the product. Without understanding the technology of the Star Citizen universe, you begin to understand just through its architecture that Microtech products.
By the way, guys, I'm so sorry if I'm being so quiet. I'm really like just taking this all in. But either way, yeah, it feels like if three companies came together, Microsoft, Apple, and Google, they just merged into one. I feel like this is what would be presented.
Are high-end and
I mean, look at the
expensive.
displays and everything.
But now let's head on over to Wally's bar through this walkway that overlooks the city, where we'll take a look at the last location I wanted to show you in this video before we conclude, and then I'll share my final thoughts.
Wally's bar. Oh yeah,
Just
I think I
as
saw
with
this.
every other location we visited on this journey, Wally's bar shows CIG's attention to detail. It's a comfortable space for people who work, live, and visit New Babbage to congregate and socialize. And it's in the nighttime that Wally's really comes alive. This space, like many others, demonstrates CIG's dedication to the craft. While lesser designers may have put together just a simple bar for people to gather in,
Looks
CIG
like a nightclub.
went the extra step to make it truly a space that you might want to visit if it were in the real world, which makes it just as well worth visiting in the virtual environment. I think games like Star Citizen begin to propose the idea that the spaces of video games should be just as well considered as those in the real world. While we don't have to deal with regulations and situations where users may die, it's still something that affects the experience overall. Going this extra step means that Star Citizen feels like a real environment. You can become immersed in this world that they're crafting. And as you saw at the beginning,
I wonder
it
what
went all
he's
the way
serving.
from the macro scale all the way down to a simple bar. And it's for that reason that I give New Babbage very high marks. Well done, CIG. You know, I don't think I've quite had such an immersive experience anywhere else in gaming, even looking back on my favorite game, Star Wars Galaxies. And perhaps that's why, despite my frustrations with the development of the project, that I keep coming back. And you know what? I think I'm probably gonna stick around, and I hope you'll join me. Oh, and don't forget, if you were looking for a VPN and you wanted to support me, head on over to nordvpn.com/morphologis and get that 2-year deal plus an extra month free. See you guys next time.
Alright, so that was a really great video. I really like it. New Babbage is an amazing city. Like I said, last time I saw it, actually the very first time I ever saw it was Bed Banana's space convention video, where they were like buying drinks, doing yoga, and just getting up to shenanigans. But to actually like dive deeper into the city, the architect, and also the design of it, it looks amazing. I mean, it's clearly a lot brighter, like, you know, with the bright colors, the white and everything, compared to ArcCorp, because ArcCorp used a lot of red and gray, and it was pretty dark. But either way, I really love the design of it. If I had to choose the design between two cities, I would actually choose New Babbage, because it just really made it more welcoming and a lot more luxurious and elegant. And on top of that, it looks like the company Microtech is pretty much like the dominating company there, because you could literally see it everywhere, and also the products everywhere, because it looks like they have like those look like those fitness bands, which is like, I guess, a popular item. And on top of that, the spaceport's over there. The hospital looks amazing. I mean, just everything looks amazing. It's clear that they love what the developers love what they do, and they put a lot of time into what they were doing to give an amazing display and product to the people playing the game. So this was a great video, and as always, shout out and credit goes to Morphologis for doing an amazing job. But now I'm really curious, what does Morphologis like design and create? Because he doesn't do hospitals, but what does he make? I think he did say that he did do high-end homes once or something like that. So I guess it's just like, you know, personal homes is what he does. But anyways, thank you guys for tuning in, and thank you guys for watching. That's all I got. Make sure to hit that notification bell so you know when I drop another video. And also shout out and credit goes to Morphologis, like I said. And also shout out to all my members, subscribers, viewers. You guys are amazing. You guys are the reason why the channel keeps on going. So until then, I'll see you guys next time.